Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Facebook. Good morning, YouTube. Good morning, Instagram. It is Thursday. It is 9:30. I think I forgot my watch this morning. It's 9:30 Cotton Cuts time. It is time for us to talk about some pretty amazing stuff. I'm excited about today's show, gang. We are going to talk about squaring up and all the different versions that means in the quilting world. Now, if this is new to you, then hopefully we're going to learn enough today to make you dangerous and go out into the ecosphere and start doing new crazy stuff. But we've got some fun stuff we're going to talk about before we get to that as well. I'm seeing everyone check in. Good morning to everyone. It is still cold in St. Louis. It is still snowing. There's a lot of snowpack on the ground, and they say we might get some more today. So it's okay. I look forward to it being warm again, and I look forward to there not being the white blanket of snow everywhere I look. But it was a fantastic weekend. We survived. The kids had 4 days off. They had the Saturday, Sunday, the Monday, and the Tuesday. And so, yeah, and then they had a half day yesterday. So my kids have been to school exactly 3 hours this week. Yay, go education. Okay. I'm seeing people. Hello from Baldwin. Hello, Kate. Welcome from Baldwin, right down the street from where we are. I see East Texas, windy Wyoming. Ice is melting. Maybe we'll get mail delivery. Yeah. So let's start there and talk about that for a second, you guys. So mail delivery for probably the next 7 days is going to be super inconsistent for everyone, especially things related to cotton cuts. So I will share with you guys, we were open on Monday. A group of us were able to make it in. The roads were fine around the shop. And so our mail guy came twice on Monday because nobody else was open. He was bored and he had an empty truck. So everyone was closed. There was no mail that he had on Monday. Then on Tuesday, everyone reopened. And like us, we had a loading dock full of things that went out. We had, I'd say probably 500 to 600 prepaids that went out that day. And so they took it in a truck and they took off with it. But a lot of that mail has been backlogged and it was sitting there. The post office worked on Monday, had not much to do, and then had a lot on Tuesday, and then we had no mail pickup. So let's just be patient with everything that's going on with respect to mail. And I know you guys might have tracking and it's not moving. There's also a new system with how they receive mail. So just be patient with all of these things. It's like I said, I think a couple weeks ago, everything is going to work on time and move smoothly unless A, weather, or B, sickness, or C, weather, or D, weather, or E, weather. And so we had weather this week. So just give it a little extra grace. It's fabric. I'm sure you guys have other things to work on until it arrives. So hopefully you guys can work on those things in the meantime. All right. Good morning, Ray from Fargo. Mail is stuck on trucks on the roads too. Yes. Yeah, the trucks that were stuck in the snow and on the side of the road. It's been crazy. Cold Michigan have a heat wave of 10. I would be thankful for 10, Pat. We actually had some days where we had like -10, -25 wind chill. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into the questions like we do every week. So these are questions submitted by you guys. Go to cottoncuts.com/live and to submit your question for next week's show. The user's here. Paula just hands them to me. I take a look and we see where we go. All right. So our first question comes to us from Brittany Miller from Wasilla, Alaska. Thanks for the question, Brittany. Would you consider adding an add a fat quarter option for the pillowcase kit? I sew the traditional burrito pillowcase, but add a fat quarter on the cuff to keep the pillow from sliding out. Okay, so I don't know what that means. I think you've stumped me, Brittany. I think this is the first time that I've been stumped on this. So I don't know what it means to sew a fat quarter to our pillowcase. So let me talk about the pillowcase kits that we have. The pillowcase kits that we use for island hopping, the pillowcase kits that we use for under the sea, and the pillowcase kits that we're using for Field of Dreamers, and then the upcoming luau. So in those kits, it's like the basic burrito method. So we've taught a lot of kids how to use this pattern, and it's 27 inches with the fabric, it's 2 inches with the fabric, and 9 inches with the fabric. And that gives you the pillowcase body, that gives you a teeny tiny bit of like flange trim, and then a cuff. And so I don't know what this means to add a fat quarter option. So what I will do is I'll have probably Carrie from our team. Carrie is going to take this item to reach out to you, Brittany, to get some more clarification on that. I would love to know more. It's something we can definitely look at. You can also definitely go on the website and get a half yard of fabric and make 2 fat quarters for your 2 pillowcase kits. That works as well. We do have those half yards available if that's something you're interested in doing. But I would love to learn, Brittany, what you mean when you want to add a fat quarter option for the pillowcase kits. But I love that you're thinking that, and definitely ask. And when we do our next pillowcase kits, if you see an add a fat quarter option, Brittany, you will know that's because of you. But I just would love to know more. Teach me, please. Okay. Our next question comes to us from Patricia Henderson from Charlotte, North Carolina. Let's see here. So Patch has a theory. I think she sews extra on and folds over the fabric to tuck it in. Okay, that makes sense. And then a pillowcase also gets a zipper. So I think what I would like to know is know a little bit more about that. And that might be an option that we add to the pillowcase kits and add to the instructions. So let's gather more information. And if you see a change in a future pillowcase, you'll know why. You were all here the day the idea was born. All right. Our second question comes to us from Patricia Henderson from Charlotte, North Carolina. Thanks for the question, Patricia. Patricia asks, I'm working on my first queen size quilt and I'm worried about how to quilt it. Should I send it out to a long arm quilter or try to quilt it myself on my domestic machine? I'm intimidated by the size. Okay. So Patricia, congratulations. You've sewn a queen size quilt. That is a big taco. That is a ginormous quilt. Queen size is big. And so I know you're asking the right question. Do you want to try and quilt it on your own, or do you want to try and send it out to a long arm to quilt? And so let's talk a little bit about kind of what both of those look like. So if you want to try and quilt it on your own domestic machine, I will tell you queen size is very large. And so one of the considerations you need to look at is what is the throat size on your machine? Because you're going to have to thread this really, really, really large quilt into the machine. And if you've got a smaller throat on your machine, you're going to have to, it's going to be some finagling. You're going to have to do some advanced engineering to kind of fold things, roll things, tuck things in the right direction so you can actually legitimately quilt this queen size on your domestic machine. Now, if you do have a larger throat size being the distance from your needle to the actual mechanics on your machine, as I'm looking at it, it's correct for me. Maybe I'll do it this way. So here's your needle, here's kind of the throat on your machine, and here's the side that's open air. So depending on what your throat size is, if it's big, then I would say you can definitely try your queen size. There's a ton of tutorials out there on how to baste a quilt that big and how to quilt it on a domestic machine in sections. If you want to do, since it's your first, straight lines is probably the best and the easiest. Anytime you get to dropping those feed dogs in free motion on a queen size, I would definitely say that's more of an advanced skill. You would want to practice and build up to a free motion on a queen size quilt. But it can be done. You just want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success, because I don't want you to start on your machine, get frustrated, and then have something that's not done. Ray, I'm going to get to that, Ray. Don't steal my line. It's coming. Let's see here. And so it is, and you also need to make sure that you're prepared and you have the upper body strength to be able to finagle this quilt and twist and turn it and feed it into your machine. I'm not going to tell you it can't be done. It can be done, and people do it all the time, especially if finances are a concern, right? If this is something that you're worried about, you want to get the quilt done, and money is tight, which is again a different situation for everyone. It can definitely be done. If you are going to make a queen size quilt going forward and want to quilt it on your machine, I would definitely recommend a quilt as you go. So that way you're quilting in smaller sections and then piecing it together in a quilt. Again, lots of tutorials online on how that is done. It's not impossible. You can also tie the quilt. We talked about this a few shows ago. And so to tie a quilt, you actually, tie the yarn through it, tie a knot, and it does the same thing as a machine quilting. It brings those three layers together. So when you wash it, the sandwich doesn't slide on you. That is another way to get to those middle sections that are really hard to quilt. Now, here are a bunch of comments from everyone that's online, as well as my personal opinion. I prefer to send it out to a long armor. And so it can be an exceptionally frustrating experience to try and quilt something that big on your home machine. And it takes a lot of preparation. It takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of basting. And like I said, it's you got to go real slow. You got to be patient, and you got to have that upper arm strength and take breaks. It is a process. And if you're willing to put in the time, then you have the pride of saying that you quilted that quilt yourself and it looks amazing and it looks beautiful and you did it yourself. And if that's important to you, then definitely go down that path. However, there's no shame at all in sending out a quilt to a long armor. Someone who professionally does this, someone who has the machine and the equipment and can have it done, and you can give it to them and get it back in a week and it is done, and you've had no stress, you have no frustration, you have nothing that you would consider to be challenging if you were to try and do it on your domestic machine. I will share. Robin is coming by the shop today, and she's going to take 4 of my quilts to a long armor to have them done. And for me, it's just I don't have the time, you guys. I don't have the time to baste them and to finish them on my machine. Plus, some of them are too big, and I am not that strong in that. I consider myself to be a quilt piecer. I like putting the pieces together. I like making the tops. The finishing is something that doesn't give me a lot of joy, and the long armors get joy from this. And so that's what they love doing. They love they've invested in the machines and the equipment and the software to make it happen. You get your joy, they get their joy. And as Ray said, you support small businesses, right? And so they're running a business too. They're doing it because they love it. And so they can definitely do it for you. Now, Diane has a fantastic idea as well here. So we traditionally look at do it yourself or send it out to a long armor. What I am seeing more and more of, and I know Cheryl on our team does this a lot, and that's actually renting time on a long arm machine. And so many quilt shops that have the floor space for it will bring in entry level kind of machines that you can use, long arm machines you can use. And they usually have a certification class that you have to take to learn how to use the machine, learn all the features, learn all the benefits on how you can use the machine, and then you rent time. And so that can be a way to save yourself if your domestic machine's not going to get the job done and you don't want to pay the expense of the long arm or the lead time. You can actually rent on the long arm. It does take a little bit of time and investment to go through the training, but once you learn how to do it, you can usually quilt a quilt in a couple of hours. They charge by the hour, and before you know it, you have it done. Right. So I think those are all fantastic options to get that queen quilt quilted. Let's see here. Oh, so Deb has a good point. So when you're working with long armors, right, I would suggest having a couple of people, as Ray suggested here. Have a couple of people that you have and that you can use that are in your circle, because sometimes long armors get backed up. And I will say that if you need a quilt for Christmas, you got to book that time with your long armor right now. Um, they usually have a cutoff and they will say, unless you've contacted me by October 1st, you're not going to get it in time for Christmas. And so let's see here. Deb Jean is saying that her long arm lady is at least 3 months out, right? Thankfully, the gal that Robin uses, and I'm not going to share this contact information with you guys, is a lovely lady. She lives in rural Missouri, close to where Robin's dad lives. And she like just does this for fun, but she's very, very simple. She has 4 patterns and she has all the white back there that you need. So she just takes your quilt, she quilts it for you and she gives it to you. And it's like a week or two lead time and she loves it. She keeps it very simple. She does one thing really, really well. And that's great for me because I would rather have a quilt be done than have, 75,000 different quilt designs I have to choose from. She's going to take care of all of that. Let's see here. Diane says her quilt store doesn't require a training class and will let you practice on donation quilts for free. I think definitely that's part of, we talked about this before. As you're learning new skills, practice on donation quilts, practice on small quilts first, and that's a fantastic strategy to practice on the donation quilts. Let's see here. Peggy says she's really new, so she only has our long arm do it. That's fantastic. Again, do what gives you joy. If finishing and putting all 3 of those layers together gives you joy, then by all means do it. If it gives someone else joy, then you're giving them a gift. All right. Thanks for the question, Patricia. What a fantastic conversation. All right. Don't forget to go to cottoncuts.com to submit a question for us next week. It'll be sitting here. I will have it, and maybe you'll stop me like Brittany did, and maybe we'll be able to find something new to do together. All right. Hello, Copeland Associates 486. Okay, new segment. So we started this a couple weeks ago. I would love to hear what you guys are currently working on. What's on your sewing table? What are you guys working on? I know we share every Monday what the Cotton Cuts team is working on. We have our show and share in the shop and show you guys all the fantastic, creative, crazy, not always quilting related projects that our team is working on. So what are you guys working on? If you want to share that in the comments, we'll talk about it a little bit. I'm still stuck with that puzzle. So I've talked about this a couple weeks now. My sewing table is a really large table. It's also great for putting together puzzles on, which Lincoln loves. And so he has this 3,000 piece puzzle, Tree of Life, that has come off. And then Eric, my husband, put another puzzle on the table. So the next time we have a gap, it is definitely being commandeered and they're going to have to find another space. Let's see here. Janet Elliott finished her Small Wild West last night. That's fantastic. Sandy Short's working on door hangers for turkeys and snowmen. That's a fantastically early project, Sandy. Good morning, Anne. Finally finishing island hopping. Sarah, I love that. That's fantastic. That island hopping, there's a lot going on in that quilt. And the like how many 9 patches you had to make for that, that was a ton. Dannon is doing island hopping and 2 other quilts, waiting on M50 to drop on Sunday patch. I love where your head's at. We're going to come back to that in a minute. Scrappy friendship ring, 3 tops at a retreat. That's fantastically productive. I love the floral states, Kay Stevens. That was a fantastic skill building project we did. Embroidery labels for the Bible cases. Brett is still working on those Bible cases. I love it. Exploding heart quilt for a wedding and a flimsy for Quilt of Valor. That's fantastic as well. 2 community quilts, pieced and quilted, Joe Mosley. Great work. You guys are so fantastic. I love all the giving that you guys are putting into these projects. I know it feels like we're past that like charity bit because we're in January, but I love that you guys are doing all these fantastic works. Let's see here. And Jean Steinhalber is crocheting an Afghan. I am working on that as well because I don't have my table again. All right, so let's talk about what's happening in the shop. So, for those of you guys participating in Field of Dreamers, some of you know they've been shipping out the door. Our prepaid Field of Dreamers are going out the door. We are almost done, you guys. We have a smaller batch that's going to go out today, and then we've got kind of some stragglers that just have some onesie twosie things that we just need to get together. But Field of Dreamers prepaids are going to be out the door well ahead of the Clue one dropping next week. So I am super excited for the team and the process changes we've made and the iteration we've made to keep this going smoothly, to get them out to you guys as quickly as possible. The pictures I see on social media make me happy because many times you guys aren't getting those boxes for 4 to 6 weeks after, and that is not the case now. So if you want to get in on the prepaid, if you place an order today, it's going to ship after Clue 1, guys. I'm going to be real honest with you. It's going to ship probably the first or second week in February, but it's going to get caught up and out the door. But remember, you cannot sign up after Clue 1 for a prepaid kit for the whole quilt in a box. You have to sign up before Clue 1 ships because we cut that off. And then we do one big batch for everyone that signed up between now and then we are done with that. So Auntie Alice says her Field of Dreamers is scheduled to arrive on Monday. I love all of that, you guys. You're going to have it in plenty of time for your Clue 1 that's going to come on Friday. And I know it's kind of like, okay, so you're a week or two late for Clue 1. It's not the end of the world, but I like that we're able to make everyone get really close to the same page as early as possible. All right. We also shipped our snippets. So if you are a member of the snippets, those are coming to you in the mail system somewhere along the way. We have the Java sneak peek to show you today. So this is our Java bundle for the month of February. It's usually like a Valentine's Day themed, and that's what they've done again this time. Again, our camera makes this look like blue. It's actually purple. So it is pink, red, and purple, and a fantastic Valentine's Day. This one will ship February 10th to all of our Java members. Don't forget, if you are signing up, you're signing up for Platinum and selecting Java as your default. If you're a Platinum member and you want to get this bundle, make sure you sign up for Java as well. We also have this little program that some of you might know about called Mystery 5.0. We did a whole show about this last week, you guys, and luau and all the fabrics and all the collections and all the things that are coming. And so we are excited about this. These kits are going to go on sale on Sunday. I'm going to talk a lot more about that in just a minute, but the Mystery 5.0 luau kits are going to go on sale on Sunday. It's odd. I get it. I know. Quilt shops that aren't open on Sunday are opening on Sunday. I think they picked it was a convenient date, the first of the month. That's easy to consider, but it is wonky. However, we're going to send you guys emails on Sunday. So if you're home getting your email, you're going to see it and you're going to get able to sign up for those. More on that coming in a minute. Okay. We're also doing Under the Sea Clue 7. So I think I saw Lonnie had a question about when Clue 7 ships. So Clue 7 ships tomorrow. Clue 7 will be emailed tomorrow. It's always the last Friday of the month. I swear, January has about 700 days in it. This year is what it feels like. So I know it seems like it's been forever since you had an Under the Sea Clue, but Under the Sea Clue 7, they're all going to go in the mail tomorrow, and the emails are going to go to you guys tomorrow as well. And so while we're talking about Under the Sea, our most recent puzzle mystery quilt that's on Clue 7, the big reveal is happening on April 24th at 1 o'clock Central Time. So put that on your calendar, April 24th, 1 o'clock. So for those of you that haven't been part of a mystery quilt reveal before, what we usually do is have a live show. So everyone, no matter where you are in the world, can see the finished design at the same time. We've done this lots of different ways. This is the one that makes everyone the happiest because everyone gets to see the finished design at the same time. Everyone, regardless of prepay or monthly, is going to get that clue emailed to them at approximately 1:15 on April 24th. So everyone can start sewing it together, can lay it out over the weekend. You don't have to wait for your package to arrive. And so we do that. That just seems fair. Everyone gets to see it. It's not hinged upon someone getting an email before everyone else and posting it in a group, and it ruins the surprise for you. This we love. And we really made that a fun experience. We are going to make some changes this time around. I'm just going to plant that seed now. So if you've watched the past couple of reveals, this one's going to be a little different. We are changing just a few things around. So make sure that you hang with us and put that on your calendar. We're also doing something fun on Instagram. So our Instagram channel, we are putting a giveaway, a daily giveaway starting tomorrow down to where Clue 1 ships on Field of Dreamers next Friday. And so every day we're going to have a daily giveaway. It is going to be a Field of Dreamers colorway inspired snip-it-ish challenge. So we're going to take some pre-cut triangles, squares, and strips, and we're going to put them. There's going to be over 100 pieces in each one, and I think we're giving away 5 a day. Yes, 5 a day. We're going to give away 5 each day of different colorways. So join us over on Instagram. We're cotton_cuts on Instagram, and be entered to win. I'm sure Paula will have you like put your name in and tag someone and all the fun stuff. Oh my gosh, thank you, Shirley. I appreciate it. I love these earrings too. I've had them forever. They are my favorite. Okay, so don't forget to join on Instagram. It's not too late to jump into Field of Dreamers if you haven't already. Make sure you sign up quickly. Some of these colorways, I just sold one out yesterday. Which one did you sell out yesterday? Was it Dreamer's Garden sold out yesterday? Dreamer's Garden sold out yesterday. I was able to restock it. You guys jumped on it, and Field of Dreamers is gone, you guys. But we still do have a couple colorways left. There's plenty. There's not plenty. There's not plenty on any of these, you guys. I would have to go back and order more, but Dreamscape is a super popular one. And then here is, I'm going to remember it. This is Awakening. This is Awakening. Yes. And so we do have some colorways in some of the fabrics. Make sure you're watching the social channels if there's a fabric you're unsure of, but please don't wait, because as I'm looking at the numbers, I think at least 2 more colorways will sell out in the next week. Pat is saying that the mystery 50 that she wants is not a pre-cut. I'm so sorry, Pat. When we like the, cut from the bolt. I'm going to talk about that in a second here. I like the cut from the bolt because you guys get access to more fabrics, but it's not enough fabric for us to make a pre-cut kit. So I'm real sorry about that. Is Stitch It's coming back, Ray? Put a pin in that. That's going to be something that we're going to talk about in a couple months. When do I get my border kit and accent kit for Under the Sea? Patricia. So for the Under the Sea, the border kits and the accent kits come out when Clue 10 comes. We always do those at the end. And so the border kits and the accent kits will come out at the end for Under the Sea. So in and around April 24th. All right, so let's talk about this luau and this Sunday situation. So if you signed up to get early access, you will be receiving an email Sunday at 7 a.m. That email, you should get the email today with the secret link that's going to tell you where to go Sunday at 7 a.m. I want to tell you guys, every time we do this, the backing sells out and the pillowcases sell out. I'm just putting it out there. Diane, those pillowcases, they're going to sell out. So if you want to get those add-ons and those accessories, make sure that you get there at 7 a.m. on Sunday, because some of these things are going to sell out. And 7 a.m. Central, Patch, you are absolutely right. And then it's going to be available to everyone at 10 o'clock Central Time. And so we have 2 families of kits that are available. So we have the pre-cut kit, which comes in classic Cotton Cuts fashion, triangles, squares, and strips. Everything is cut for you in those colorways. And then we have the cut from the bolts, which is traditional yardage that you would then have to cut the triangles and the squares and the strips in order to make the finished quilt. Right. And so we've modeled all these up. Some of these collections were too fantastic to pass. I know that the cutting, Pat, is not super great, but at the same time, they make beautiful quilts. Otherwise, we wouldn't have put them together the way we did. And so we've modeled all these up. We really like how these fabrics play together. This design is a lot of fun. It uses shapes that I've never used before and combinations that we don't typically use. So it is definitely not a continuation of island hopping or a continuation of Aloha. It is its own standalone design. And as I said on the show last week, you're going to get all the parts you need to make layout A or layout B. I think we're one of the only shops that are doing that. I think they're doing some weird thing. Everything you need to make layout A or layout B. So once you make all your subunits each week, you're going to get the option to lay out A or B. And with everything Cotton Cuts, if you want to come up with a C or a D, that is completely up to you. But we're giving you everything you need to make the A, the B, or a Frankenstein C if you want to put it all together and do both methods. So let's see here. The Clue 1 will drop on March 4th. So from the time, so we'll sign up February 1st. You have a month to get your kit, a month to get your fabric. When will access for Shop Your Stash be? Greta is asking this. It's all going to be the same day, Greta. So you can sign up for Shop Your Stash on February 1st as well. Any new pieces to sew together, like island hopping, had a new twist. Oh, so I know island hopping had that the half rectangle triangle, or half rectangle triangle. I said it correctly. So there's not anything new with a twist like that, Patch, for island hopping. However, now that we've added these dies to our stable of dies, be on the lookout for a half rectangle triangle coming up with the next mystery that signs up for this summer. Sneak a peek alert, that might be coming your way. You didn't hear it here, but you did hear it here. So be on the lookout. Half rectangle triangles are going to be coming back as well. And then we also have the winding waist curve pieces. And I was in a bathroom like a couple weeks ago and I saw something. We can use those dies. It's not winding ways. So be on the lookout for that too, because inspiration comes from everywhere, no matter where you are. Is Illusion still running late? Jackie Hellman. So we were planning on shipping Illusion in March. Illusion is going to ship in February. So I would say late is subjective. It will be later than the rest, but not as late as originally planned. So Jackie, it is going to be coming. It is going to be coming in February timeframe. And Illusion, we have all the backing here, so it's going to be fantastic. Ray is going to need 2 kits. I will not stop you. I am a proud enabler. Yes, Sarah, those half rectangle triangles, yeah, they were a challenge, but I think the pre-cut to me when I was sewing them, the pre-cut half rectangle triangles were easier than when I've tried to sew them without the pre-cut. And so I know that a lot of people were like, "Hey, how does it work?" And I think a lot more people got to the finish line because of the pre-cuts. And so for that, I am motivated to continue to try and use them. And it's a skill and a muscle we can all build together. Let's talk about our YouTube live sale. So we had a YouTube live sale a week and a half ago at our regular Friday at 1 o'clock slot. However, for our next one, we're going to shake it up a little bit. We're going to move it to a Thursday night at 7 p.m. Central Time. And so it is going to be, I think it's next week. Is it a week from today? February 5th. So it's a week from today at 7 o'clock Central Time. We're going to be doing a Designers After Dark. And so the way this is going to work is we're going to pick different designers and we're going to have their fabrics in different configurations. So we're going to hang with Designers After Dark. It's going to be fun. We're going to have giveaways. There's going to be free stuff, all the things. If you want to participate in the YouTube live, make sure you go to cottoncuts.com/registration. So that way you can link your YouTube name up with your actual name when we get your invoice to the right place. If you've already registered, you don't have to register again. That's just to make sure that you have everything on the back end so we can get you all the invoices for all these fantastic Designers After Dark fabrics that we will be featuring in the show. And retreats. That's why I'm wearing my retreat shoot today. Yes. So we have 2 kind of retreats coming up relatively quickly. These guys are speeding along. So we're going to Denver in March and Savannah in May. For Denver, we've paired with Rebecca Bryan. We're going to do freezer paper piecing. It's a fantastic technique. I am excited to learn. Rebecca does a fantastic job teaching this technique, and the quilt design, it's amazing. It was in an email that we just recently sent out. You could do a puzzle mystery quilt. You could do a quilt shop hop in Denver. It's spring in Denver. It's beautiful. It's vibrant. It's alive. We have 5 seats left for Denver. 5. I'm going to show this to everyone. We have 5 seats left for Denver. So make sure that you guys sign up for Denver quickly because again, we're like 2 months away for Denver and it is coming on super darn fast. Let's see here. Patch, she's funny. She likes to buy fabric bundles, but do we have a cutter person come with it? So we can wrap up Dominic and mail him. However, you're going to have to feed him for the next 5 years. So I don't necessarily know if it's cost effective for you. Chloe Shell. So the studio retreat, we're working on it. Like I said, this summer we have some challenges with St. Louis because of the World Cup and hotels being blocked. We're still working on that studio. And then the Liberty Project, yes. So I just sent an email to Riley Blake today. So that's going to be coming in the March timeframe. And then we have Savannah coming up in May. That's going to be one of our signature light retreats. So it's a puzzle mystery quilt and a shop hop in Savannah. We are staying at the historic DeSoto Hotel in downtown. It is fantastic. It is fun. These retreats are a hoot and a half, you guys. There's a lot of retreat attendees on the chat here with us. We had a ton of fun. It is different than a lot of other retreats. And you guys make lots of friends. Like I see people interacting in our group and I'm like, they met on a retreat and they know each other and it's fantastic. PMQ colorways for Denver. I actually had I had Sheila go back. We had to redo a couple of them. So you're gonna see them in the next day or so. Beth loves her golden hour fabric. It is that fabric. It took me by surprise. I'm not normally a brown fan, but it took me by surprise. I think I can take a breath. What's wrong? What did I miss? Hold on. Paula came behind the camera, gang. So hold on to your butts. What do we? Okay, so Paula is saying that if you post a photo with your box into the Cotton Cuts Fabric Facebook group, like, hey, here's hey, here's my box. If you post a what? This one's empty, dude. Oh, okay. No, I'm saying just post a photo with your box. You can do this, or you can open it up and show us what's inside of it. But tell us your colorway. If you post a photo, she's like adding all these rules, guys. I'm gonna make it real simple. just post a photo with your box and put it in the Facebook group or put it on Instagram and tag us. And we're going to pick some assortment of people to win a $25 gift card to the shop. It's probably going to be 5. We're again on Friday. And so if you do not get your color before then, it is absolutely a-okay. We're going to have lots more opportunities for you guys to have unboxings for those that do arrive after next Friday. So we want to make it as fair as possible and give away as much stuff as possible. And I understand, I know the first comment's going to be, what if my box doesn't arrive before Friday? It'll be okay. We'll still have opportunities for you guys to get awesome stuff as we go along. Okay. Are we ready to talk about squaring up? I am ready to talk about squaring up. Okay. So when we talk about squaring up our quilts and our blocks, squaring up is a skill that typically happens in kind of 2 segments. There's a squaring up as you sew, and then there's the squaring up as you finish your quilts. And that happens in 2 parts. So I'm trying to add some structure to this so you know where we're going with this conversation. So as people have been sewing together, they're under the sea monthly clues. There's been a lot of questions about how do I square this up? How do I trim this? I've seen this in a couple of other groups online. So it was the catalyst for the conversation we're about to have today. And so I would say there's going to be like everything. There's the quilt police and there's what you should do. And then there's what real people actually do. And so I want to say that when it comes to squaring up blocks as you sew them, there's the textbook quilting, which is you sew a piece together, you square it. You sew pieces together, you square it. You sew pieces together, you square it. And then there's people like me that are usually like, I'm eyeballing it, it's close enough. As long as I'm consistent, it's good. And I only trim up when I absolutely positively have to. And so I want to say that's the beauty of quilting. That's the beauty of what we do. If what I'm telling you resonates with you, you're like, hey, I want to try that. I think it sounds fantastic. It's a way to possibly eliminate some problems that I'm having down the road. Then definitely give this a whirl. I would not suggest doing this on a project that you're already in the middle of stream on. This is one of these things, if you want to do a squaring up practice, you need to start it from the beginning of the project. And like starching, you want to make sure you square everything up at the same stage. You're going to starch everything either at the beginning or at the end. And I want to say that these are really prevention strategies, but I'm going to talk to. These are not rescue strategies. These are really things that you can do to prevent future problems, prevent problems for your future self. Now, if you're totally like, I just made something with my hands, that's great, that's fantastic, and I love it, and I'm done with it, then fantastic, live in that space and appreciate that you've made a work of art. But if you are really learning and you want the precision that comes with quilting and all the points matching up, then let's talk about squaring up your blocks. And so I'm going to talk about something that I've done before. And this is the kind of hairy bits, right? So you're sewing along and you're like, oh, I need to trim this down, and you trim it and you've cut it too small. I would say we probably get 1 or 2 emails a week from someone who's taken a puzzle mystery quilt and cut it too small, or they've cut off one side, or they've miscalculated. And before you know it, you've cut it and now it's too small for what you need it to do. And so I'm going to say that a lot of people, this happens to, because you get going and you're in a slipstream and you're sewing away and you forget that in order for it to be a 4-inch finished square, that it's not cutting to 4 inches, it's cutting to 4.5 inches so that way it'll finish at 4 inches. And so I know that this concept, and the more practice we get, the more comfortable it gets, but you have to make sure all your dimensions add that 1/4 inch all the way around, which is actually 1/2 inch on each side. And I've done it, guys. I've accidentally made a mistake and I take off a 1/4 inch or a hair on this side, and before you know it, it's too small. And so make sure that you're always reminding yourself, you got to add that 1/2 inch. You got to add that 1/2 inch and add that 1/2 inch to make sure that you finish it in the correct dimensions. It's really sad, especially if you're tight on fabric when that happens, that you can't actually use that piece anymore. Sometimes I put it in a little container and it comes back. Sometimes I just let it go and I'll figure I'll just absorb that 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch mistake elsewhere on the quilt. Then there's always the, forgetting about that seam allowance, make sure you're factoring it in. Then there's what happens if you want to square something up as you sew it. And so when I say square it up, it doesn't have to be a square. This can be a rectangle. This can be a long piece. But ultimately, what you want to do is make sure that your top and bottom lines are parallel and your left and right lines are parallel. And so why do we have to do this? Because sometimes we have inconsistencies when we sew. And sometimes our seam allowance is inconsistent. Or sometimes we're sewing pieces on the bias and they accidentally stretch. And our shape, instead of being 4 by 4, it is now 4 1/4 by 3 3/4, right? And so things change, things morph. There's obviously the answer of taking it apart and resewing it. But if you want to keep it where it's at and you want to just trim it down, one of the easiest ways to do this to make sure it's as consistent as possible is to take your piece and find the center of your piece, the center of your design. I want to be clear when I say that. It's not necessarily the center of the piece. Where is the center of the design on the piece that you have just sewn? For some cases, you can easily fold it in half one direction, fold it in half the other direction to find your center. And then you're going to take whatever dimension, half one direction, half one way, and trim it. Sorry, I got this upside down. Sorry, I was trying to do math. And then we've got the Y, and then you'll do half one direction and half the other direction as well. And that's where you're going to draw your trim line to make sure that you've centered the design, because it's more important to center the design than it is necessarily to center the piece that you've sewn. And so in some cases, depending on the sewing errors, depending on the cutting, or depending on the intentionality, I'll come back to that you've put into it, you might take off, ½ inch here and 1/8 of an inch here. But what you really want to do is make sure that when you have your finished piece after you've squared up your piece that you've sewn together, that it's centered around your design element and that you're measuring in both directions. Okay, so let's talk about when you might intentionally cut something too big. And this is a solid quilting technique, is if you're dealing with pieces that have a lot of bias, like a flying geese, it is very common to cut it bigger than you need and then trim it down to the finished dimension you want. So that way all that variability gets trimmed out, it gets thrown away, and it gets pushed to the side. I will tell you that that this is a very common Bonnie Hunter technique, right? So Bonnie Hunter does patterns for lots of different varying skills. And one of her most common techniques is cutting and sewing bigger and then trimming down to the finished size. And in that case, that's absorbing some of that variability. So your finished piece is as beautiful as possible, as beautiful as designed. And so in that case, this is definitely the technique and the strategy you want to use, because you might be here and you might be cutting as much as 3/4 of an inch off all the sides, because that's how much extra it is. Now, for some quilters, that's painful to do. Be transparent. Like it's painful because it's a little bit of a waste of fabric, right? I would rather sew it right from the beginning than necessarily cut it to accommodate for errors at the end. So it's wasteful. Plus, then you always have this little like mound of these little shreddy pieces. And what do you do with it? Now you have to throw it away. And it's also time consuming to sew it bigger and then to trim it down. With the Bonnie Hunter quilts, I've done 400 flying geese where you sew them bigger and trim them down. That is a lot of time. That is a bring the cutting board down to the family room and watch a movie type of cutting and trimming. And if you're okay with that, then that is fantastic. But make sure that you know what you're signing up for. That is, again, it's a super valid technique. Sew bigger, cut it down using the center method, measuring in both directions. Super valid technique for squaring things up, but make sure that you know the time commitment and what you're getting into. Let's see here. You might be tempted to trim excess when you're sewing things together. So this happens a lot with, I will say, a flying geese. It happens some with the puzzle mystery quilt, where you're stitching along and that line is not straight around your piece, right? You've got like a triangle with a little bit of a dog ear hanging out, or a square that kind of goes a little wonky sauce and it's a little uneven. I would say to make sure that you measure before you trim off any of those little bits and parts and pieces that aren't forming a consistently straight line. Make sure you measure it. Make sure you're measuring it from the center of your design. Because sometimes some of those pieces that are wavy, if you trim them to the bottom of the wave, you're actually taking out too much of your fabric and you're making a smaller finished component than you need. When in actuality, that wave could have been absorbed into a seam allowance and made a perfectly fine piece. And I think when it comes to a lot of these, we hem and haw over that. Oh my God, it's 1/8 of an inch, or it dips a little bit, it's a little wavy. A lot of those imperfections can be absorbed into the seam allowance when it's sewn to its next piece. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. It doesn't necessarily have to be spot on dimension wise. And you don't have to pull your hair out tearing things apart, because the 1/4 inch seam allowance, when you're sewing those two pieces together, can absorb a lot of those imperfections and a lot of those errors. Let's see here. So when we talk about this, Linda Wemple is saying it starts with the needle. Try to be consistent with the scant 1/4 inch is always her challenge. Consistency is important to this. And that's always been my talking track. Anytime you're sewing anything, make it as consistent as possible. The same needle, the same thread, the same sewing machine, and the same 1/4 inch seam allowance. I've gotten in trouble when I've started something on one project and moved to another sewing machine. Quarter inches are not the same on every machine. And you would think it's an objective unit of measure. This would not be a variable. But between two different machines, it's been two different challenges for me. Um, Next, I'm going to measure and press to the T. Squaring up its center design is important. Yes, starting from the center of the design, not necessarily the center of the piece that you've stitched together. Ray says switching over to a better thread and it helps for measurements. Yes. So if you don't want to sew it bigger and trim it down, then you need to work on that technique in order to make it perfect from the time you sew it together. And so things like needle, things like thread, things like seam allowance, all of those things will contribute towards that piece coming out as spot on with dimensions as possible. Let's see here. Deb has a grandson that loves those cuttings for a punching bag. I love that idea for it. Make sure that when you're measuring these pieces, when you're measuring the dimensions, when you're measuring where you're starting from, that you're actually making the line on your ruler, the grid on your ruler is on top of the fabric. And I know that this is a question. A lot of people are unsure. When I'm measuring, where is the printed line supposed to go? Is it alongside my fabric? Is it off my fabric? The most precise dimension is to make sure that the printed line on your fabric is on top of your fabric when you're measuring these dimensions, and that it's on top of when you're cutting it. So make sure you're keeping that in mind. Again, that's a consistency thing. If sometimes you're on the fabric, sometimes you're off the fabric, sometimes you're alongside the fabric, all of those variations, while small, can sometimes give you a headache at the end of the day if you're super worried about the dimensions and how your pieces measure out. Make sure to check all your blocks as you go. And so again, this is making sure you're doing it consistently at every stage of the process. If you're sewing a puzzle mystery quilt, make sure that each clue you're measuring and cutting and trimming as you go. We actually don't recommend trimming the puzzle mystery quilt. They usually come out pretty even as is. But if you're sewing, for example, an island hopping, like Sarah just did, make sure that those 9 patches, if you want to square them up, you're squaring them up all at the same stage. You're not taking and sewing up half of your 9 patches and then sewing up half of your half rectangle triangles. Make sure that you check your blocks as you go, not all at the end. Josie's asking what needle size is best for piecing. So I use a 70-10 or an 80-20. I use a Smex. I know a lot of people have the gold plated. There's all sorts of variability in this, and it's highly dependent on your machine. So that's where the testing comes in. But I am a 70-10, 80-20 Smets machine person whatever's most convenient. To me, I can't tell the difference between the two. I think probably my biggest needle advice is to make sure the needle matches the substrate you're sewing with. So if you're sewing with denim, you make sure that you have a denim needle. If you're sewing with jersey, make sure you have a rounded tip needle. And so just making sure that the needle matches the substrate. But I haven't gotten into the chrome plated, gold plated, any of those types of needles. I am definitely in that. I would love to hear what you guys think with respect to your preferred quilting piecing needle. Pat says each of our machines prefers a different thread brand. I've heard that. I've heard Orifil tends to create a lot of excessive lint in the Janome, but the Orifil sews fine on my machine. But then, depending on the project, sometimes I'll go to my Gutermann as well. That's kind of a standard for me. Now, remember that perfection is not your goal, right? I mean, we can live in a world where we want to be perfect, and that is a world where we're going to be frustrated. So what I am advising for this is to make sure you guys are consistent. If you're going to be trimming, trim consistently. If you're not trimming, don't trim at all. I don't trim. I hardly trim at all my blocks. If you were going to be cutting bigger, sewing bigger and cutting down, make sure you do that throughout your project. Make sure that you're just as consistent with your thread, as consistent with your needle, and as consistent with your stitch length, and things will work out. Savannah says titanium plated because they tend to stay sharper longer. 70-10 Microtex needle, particularly for finicky digital printed cotton. Yes. Oh, Melinda has a fantastic. Make sure to use the same ruler. I'm going to add that to my list, Melinda, is to make sure that you're using your same ruler. Because believe it or not, sometimes different manufacturers print their lines differently in their different measurements. I will say that the one thing that I am going to suggest you not use when you're measuring is your cutting mat. I got one right here. Don't use this. Now, again, this is a quilt police thing, right? And I will readily admit that. Using your cutting mat to measure it gets the job done with lack of anything else. It'll definitely work. But quilting mats are on a rubber. As an engineer, rubbers stretch over time, they warp over time, and they do lose their printing. So they also will then lose their accuracy. So if you have to, it's not going to be the end of the world to use your cutting mat as a ruler. You most definitely can. But I would strongly suggest using a ruler if you have it available and making sure that you're using those kind of grids that are on it. let's see here. What should I do when I have an edge that is uneven and only some of it can be squared up? Do you square up the required size when you can, and do you square it up to a size regardless of size? So that gets to the wave. And so sometimes if you square it up to the smallest dimension possible, so you've got this edge here and you've got a little piece that just it bowed on you. It just decided it wanted to take a holiday and get a little bit of bow into it. And so do you trim down to the bottom of the bow or do you trim to your size? My counsel is to trim to your size as long as the bow will fit within your 1/4 inch seam allowance of your finished design. And then you have to check it after you stitch it together because you don't want to cut here and then that piece and that like you're bringing everything to your smallest dimension. So I will say that I would cut it to its finished dimension that you want, provided any of those wavy imperfections will fit into your 1/4 inch seam allowance. Um, let's see here. So when our overseas order is going to be sent, all of the, if you have an international order and it's a colorway that's mailed, those are going out with all the regular orders. Savannah says her cutting mat shrunk from being in the sunlight. That's absolutely true. They any sort of extreme temperatures, any sort of light, and they're gonna warp, they're gonna map, they're gonna be wavy, and they're gonna change dimension. Okay. All right. So, and don't forget just consistency, 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 consistency. Same rulers, same sewing machines, same seam allowance, same thread, same needle, and you will take a lot of the headaches that a lot of people suffer from right out of the table. Let's see here. Attempted to trim. Yeah, okay. So now let's talk about squaring up your finished quilt. So you've put all this time and all this loving effort into sewing all these blocks together and then putting the blocks into your finished quilt. And so now you have a fluff. And so you have a flimsy, I think we call it, right? Flimsy is what we agreed upon. I would say it's an unfinished quilt top, but flimsy is what we said. And so it's all pieced together and you're getting ready to either quilt it or send it to that long armor. And you notice that some of your rows, they got a little wonky. And while everything in the middle of the grid is lined up perfectly, your outside edge is a little funny. It has decided to do its own thing. No matter how precise you run the inside, sometimes your edge gets a little wonky. And specifically, your corners get a little weird too, where some borders might not line up, or you have something that was really long and you trimmed it, and it's a little different. So how do you square up that quilt top before you get it quilted? And so for me, this is the more important square of the quilt top versus the sandwich. And so this is really, you're setting your long armor up for success by squaring your quilt before it goes. And so one of the easiest ways to do this is to get a big table or a big clean floor and lay it out. And use your longest rulers to just square up those dimensions. Take off all the extras. Make sure there's no doubt when that quilt comes back to you where you want that finished edge to be. And in order to do that, when you're looking at the corners of your quilts, we recommend having a big giant square ruler, right? Because you're going to want those corners to come in at exactly 90 degrees. And these big giant square rulers will help you because you want one edge to be along this edge of your ruler, one edge to be along this edge of your ruler, and you want that corner to be crisp. Really, and all the things I was looking at about squaring up your quilt is really making sure those corners are as crisp as possible. And so when you start there, when all 4 of your corners are as crisp as possible using the big square ruler, here comes the cough, gang. Then you can start looking at your long edges. Now, you've put this quilt on your floor and you've got your rotary cutter out. I've got a drink, Paula. I'm good. And you put your rulers out and you've got your rotary cutter and you're like, okay, I can do this. I can cut my square this way and this way. Please, 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 for the sake of your floors, make sure that you put your cutting mat underneath it. And so what you're going to do is you're going to put your cutting mat underneath your quilt, your ruler on top of your quilt, and use your rotary cutter. Make sure that you stay on your cutting mat. I'm not going to say from firsthand experience that I've ever done that, but I've actually done that before. Make sure that you keep your ruler on top of your cutting mat and use your rotary cutter to cut all these edges. Now, when it gets to those long edges, right, it's a long ways on many of the quilts we make. They make these fantastic creative grids rulers that are 24, 26 inches long, I think. They're long. They're 24 inches long. And so this is meant to be used to cut with the fabric. So it can be used to cut fabric off the bolt, but it can also be used for those really long edges. And so what I advise again is make sure you take your cutting mat, make sure it's underneath it. If you're using a 24-inch ruler, make sure your cutting mat is at least 24 inches long. I'm going to say you want to make sure that your cutting mat matches your ruler. And then when I cut those edges, I go along the edge, and then when I get close to the end, I veer off, right? Because the last thing I want to do is keep going. And then when you get to the end of your ruler, all of a sudden you're making a line that goes like that. So my advice and counsel when you're using your long straight edge to go on your mat is to make sure that you go away. You're intentionally coming away from, so that we don't accidentally come back and go over to the top and take off a piece of your beautiful, beautiful quilt that you spent a ton of time piecing. Now, sometimes these rulers can get expensive. I'm not going to say sometimes. Realistically, these rulers are expensive, right? These creative grids, real big rulers are very expensive. And so one of the things that we use here in the shop are these pieces of acrylic. And so you can get these at any sort of glass store, any sort of mat store, is these straight pieces of acrylic. We had them etched with our brand logo on them and the dimensions. So we know, for our cutting team here knows, like if we're cutting a 9-inch width of fabric, this is the template we use. But this also mimics the same exact thing, because when you're cutting the outside of your finished quilt flimsy, you're not measuring anything. You're really just making sure that everything is square and the edge is straight. So same thing, make sure that you have your cutting mat underneath it. Make sure you're here. And when you get to the end, go away. Don't necessarily keep going straight, because once you get to that edge of the ruler, it is literally anyone's guess what's going to happen. Let's see here. Sarah says, actually going off the cutting mat is a rite of passage. Yes, I feel like you do it once and then you learn. So I'm trying to tell you that now if you've never done it. Make sure to move your cutting mat with your cutting so that we don't accidentally cut carpet or hardwood, heaven forbid. Patricia Manchak is asking for the ruler for luau. And so that'll be on the website as well this weekend. It's a cat's cradle. It's the extra large ruler. So that's going to be there as well. Do we sell our logo plastic rulers? So we do not. And so this is, I mean, I had these made, gosh, probably like 8 years ago for us. And I don't even think the manufacturer does it anymore. But yeah, they're etched. I feel like maybe that's something we can look into going forward. But yeah, they've worked really well. They've lasted here forever. And of course, in our shop, they get a large amount of use after it. Okay, let me see. Yeah, I actually wrote a big note. Make sure the mat goes under your quilt when you're cutting so that we don't cut the floor. Let's see here. Let's see here. Make sure you catch your issues early and make sure that you're squaring up as you go if this is important to you, because the last thing you want to do is get it all together and have a problem. And make sure, and doing all this, like, why are we doing all this? Because some of us, like that square, everything's straight, everything's even. But you want to make sure that your fan quilt's going to hang beautifully and look crisp and professional. If that's your goal, then make sure you're taking all of these steps. Melinda's saying she's still new to quilting and had been building her supplies. She's using a T-square to mark it and then cut with the rotary cutter. Melinda, I love it. I love the creative use of the T-square. That's going to get you the 90-degree angles in your corners. That's also going to give you a nice long straight edge. Basically just a long straight edge. Please don't use any like school rulers. I would be exceptionally worried as you're cutting this, but definitely as you're cutting your quilt sandwich of your rotary cutter jumping. And we definitely don't need anyone cutting themselves in this process. So make sure that you're using a ruler or a cutting surface that has a little bit of thickness to it so your ruler doesn't jump over. Sarah, I think that qualifies as a rite of passage as well as accidentally cutting yourself when you take like the kid's school ruler to cut when you're quilting instead of using a proper tool. Let's see here. So Nikki's the same thing. Use her husband's long straight edge from his workshop. Same thing. Any sort of long extended straight edge, make sure it has some thickness. Don't use cardboard. I think when I was starting out, I was like, oh, I've got this cardboard that's a long straight edge, because your rotary cutter is just going to cut right through that. And that's not going to work either. I am going to say, so then after you've got this and you've sent it off to your long armor, or you've quilted it, it's going to come back to you. And as we've talked about in the past, long armors will require some extra batting and some extra backing to go around it, because as they quilt it, things are going to move. Everything's a living thing, and it's going to stretch in some directions, and it's going to want to move as they're working with it. And so they want to have as much leeway as possible to make sure that your quilt top doesn't end up with a backing that's off on the side and has exposed back, right? So we always, when we use a long armor, we're going to send it bigger than we need to. And so there's going to be a trim process there as well, where we have to bring it back to the quilt size we want so it can be bound and finished. And so the easiest way to do this, and I think the way I've done it almost 99% of the time, is have the long armor do it, right? So the long armor has the equipment, the space, and the tools to be able to square this quilt up for you. And so almost always when I get a finished quilt back from the long armor, it's already been straightened up for me. And so in that case, if your long armor is willing to do that, then I would strongly suggest, again, they're professionals. It brings them joy. They can square up that quilt for you and they can trim off all those extras. And then of course, always ask for that fabric back too, because I always use them for small projects around. Let's see here. The extra large. Yeah, Ray Williams. So when it comes to the luau, it is the extra large cat's cradle from Creative Grid. Again, it's going to be on our website, so we'll make it as easy as possible for you guys to find it. If you choose to do this at your home, please be aware that the process is the same as the top, but now you've got a lot of bulk and you've got weight and it's heavy. And so just like if you're quilting that queen size quilt, make sure that you give yourself plenty of time. You're going to have to finagle this quilt. You're going to be moving stuff. You're going to be using long straight edges. Make sure that you give yourself plenty of time and that you take breaks if you need to as you're cutting it. And same thing, the same theory about when you're cutting those edges, make sure I always go off at an angle versus continuing straight, because once you get past your straight edge, it's pretty scary. And so I kind of curve off just as a precautionary measure. But again, when you curve off, make sure your cutting mat is underneath it. Use your long armor, use your long rulers, work one side at a time, and make sure to trim everything. Now, again, things may have shifted. So for those corners, the corners, everything I read when I was preparing for this, everything I've always done, the corners are the most important part. Make sure your corners have that 90-degree. So that way, if it's important to you and you want to have that win of experiencing the mitered corner, make sure that your corners are square and you're using the square rulers. Like I said, this one here, this is one of the biggest ones we have in the shop. And so this is a 9.5-inch. I think we might actually even also have a 12-inch in the shop as well. That gives us a nice edge so we can predict. In the scenario, sometimes you might only have a 2.5 or 3.5-inch. You can get close on that 90 degrees, but again, if squaring up and measuring is important to you, get the biggest, squarest ruler you can, or in some cases, a T-square. T-squares work fantastically well as well. Let's see here. Lonnie says she's learned some new tips. Thank you. I appreciate that, Lonnie. And long armor does straighten her quilts after she is done. Yes, that is a tip. If you might not know to ask for that, but ask for that, because those folks know what they're doing. They've got the space and the tools to make it and have it done professional and have it done right. Okay, so the beauty of all of these prevention strategies, cutting as you sew, cutting before it's quilted, and then cutting after it's quilted, is to make sure that you're checking as you go, you're squaring before it's quilting, and being methodical about trimming. Again, if this is important to you, this is how you're going to prevent future headaches for your future self. The last thing I want to say, it's okay if things aren't perfect. It's okay if things aren't perfect. I'm going to say that to you guys. It's absolutely okay if it's not perfect. If one corner is slightly less square than another, if your quilt is still going to be beautiful, if you have to trim more off one side, if you got to wave and you have to bring it down and now all of a sudden it's a little smaller, it is absolutely okay. Your quilt is still going to keep someone warm. It's still going to be loved, and it'll probably still be passed on to someone else. So, it does not have to be perfect to be wonderful. This is really more technique. If you feel compelled to build these techniques and skills, that's great. I guarantee you, I've given a lot of quilts in my life. Not a single person has been like, man, use that 3-inch ruler on that corner. I could see it from here. You should have used a 12-inch square. Not a single person has ever said that in their life. And not a single person is going to be like, oh, this is a little wavy. And your side, they're not going to care because it's functional, it works, and it gets the job done. All right. Let me see. So question for you guys. Is there anything that you're going to try differently next time to square up your blocks or quilts? So is there anything that we've talked about here that you guys are going to implement on the next thing you do? I would love to get some feedback on that to make sure that we're delivering content that you guys love and that it's helpful for you. I know that you guys have already learned some new tips and tricks, but is there something that you guys are going to, what's your selfish takeaway? I'll use that verbiage. That's something I use in a different group. But what's your selfish takeaway from all these squaring up tips and tricks? I would love to hear it. If you guys could put that in the comments, that would be much appreciated. All right. Don't forget everything we've talked about earlier in the show. Mystery 5.0 Luau is going on sale Sunday. Under the Sea Clue 7 of 10 comes out tomorrow. Field of Dreamers Clue 1 ships next Friday. Denver is in March. We have 5 seats open, 5 seats. Whoop, whoop. And our YouTube sale is next Thursday at 7 o'clock. A lot of stuff going on, guys, as there always is, because we like to keep busy here and we like to keep fun. Please advise how to do a rounded corner. Oh, right. That is a fantastic tip. We will put that up in a fantastic future show. Let's see here. So thanks for hanging with me to the end of the show. For all of you guys that are still here, we're going to do as we always do and ask you guys a question. Find this video on YouTube, on Instagram, or Facebook and answer this question in the comments. We'll pick one lucky winner to win a $25 gift certificate to the Cotton Cut Shop. the question, we're going to keep it real easy today, guys, because we've had a lot to talk about. So the question is, what is your favorite tool in your sewing room and why? So what is your favorite tool in your sewing room and why? Is it a ruler? Is it a rotary cutter? Is it a pair of scissors or a seam ripper? So I'm going to share two of my favorite sewing tools. One is actually a sewing tool, one's not. So I love my seam ripper. I was on Facebook and there was someone that posted they did these hand-turned seam rippers that is a stiletto on one side, a seam ripper on the other. It's pink, it's beautiful, it's awesome. I love it. And then the second is I've mentioned this a couple times before. I love wooden chopsticks. Whenever we go to an Asian restaurant and we get the chopsticks, I always keep them. Those are fantastic for turning those corners in the quilts. It is fantastic. Brittany, we answered your question kind of at the beginning. You will be getting an email from us about that. Let's see here. I like the idea of squaring up as you go. Let's see here. Usually veering off, usually just stop. Yeah, 6.5-inch square is a favorite as it's most used. Pressing wool for sharp press. Perfection is not the goal. Peggy, I love that. Perfection is not the goal. Consistency and finishing. What's that now? Oh, sorry. Okay, I think we've covered everything. That is it for us this week, you guys. I hope everyone, I hope the snow melts where you are and you guys are able to get outside this weekend. If not, I mean, you get to be inside and sewing. There are definitely worse places to be. Make sure you guys are posting photos of your Field of Dreamers kits as they arrive, and we will talk to you guys next week. That's it for us. Happy sewing, everybody, and we will see you soon. Bye now. And cut. Thank you so much for watching our video. We have so much fun making these, and we hope that you were both delighted and inspired by what you just watched. This video was sponsored by Cotton Cuts. Cotton Cuts is your one stop for all the best fabric and thread memberships. Love fabric? We've got you covered. Love thread? We've got you covered. We get that no two quilters are cut from the same cloth, which is why our memberships are as unique as you. We also have the largest block of the month in the world. Over 4,000 detectives solve our puzzle mystery quilts every year, and you can join them. Simply go to cottoncuts.com to learn more about all the awesome and fun things that we're doing. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe to make sure you get all of our new fresh content every time it comes out. Thank you so much. Happy sewing enthusiasts, and we will see you soon. Bye now.